Everyone, it's Daniel Elwood and Robert Paul Johnson. We are the Last Nighters. You can find us at lastnighters.com and also on the Liberty Movement's YouTube channel. We're going to be talking about Confessions of a Dangerous Mind tonight, and it is about the progenitor, the creator of such classic game shows as The Dating Game, The Newlywed Show, and The Gong Show. It is Confessions of a Dangerous Mind, directed by George Clooney. You can find the show notes and more for this at lastnighters.com/191. And returning to the show is Bachelor number 2, Mike C., hailing from Canada, way up north. Welcome back to the show, Mike C. Where can people find your work on the newfound website that you have created to showcase your prior appearances on our show and also your musical stylings?
Thank you very much. Glad to be here. You guys can find me at mechanicaldreamrevolution.com, all one word. Yeah, I make music. I've been on the show a few times. You guys helped me with my transitioning into a more libertarian mindset. And yeah, like a phoenix rising from the ashes, I'm a new man.
Well, you are a man that I look up to, and I actually listen to your music quite a bit. I think that it has that storytelling narrative structure to it that you get something different from each time. And I like that you play with pop cultural themes, both in music and in movies and even news clips. And it melds together into kind of giving a perspective on what's going on in the world. And I find that very, very interesting and almost inspired in a way to where it probably has more meaning on a subjective value to the listener than perhaps you intended in creating.
Well, I mean, the intent was to provoke a response and a challenge. So, I mean, you're giving me pretty high praise, which is really nice. I like that. And I've noticed you're able to kind of just go to the beginning and like plow through the whole thing again. I'm assuming during your work day or something. But the intention was to create, evoke emotion and evoke a subjective response. If I can create a sort of a safe space for somebody to tap into whatever reservoir of thoughts and feelings they haven't processed, that's ideal. I mean, I think that's the point of art in some ways, if not to just, for me to connect my ideas to other people, but also to like sort of influence your own ideas, or maybe, kind of an inception style of nurturing seeds. And I don't know how to describe it. Does that sound? I'm already starting to ramble, and it's been about 2 minutes into the show, so
no, it's okay.
It's a new record.
Okay.
New record. I think
I like it.
There are two purposes in art. One is to just simply get an idea out, right? If I'm just trying to push my message onto you, that's fine. But also, I did notice like I was getting some pretty serious emotional responses from a couple people in my life from some of the pieces, like especially like a couple years ago, earlier work. And so, yeah, I mean, there is a drive to try to create a subjective experience that I don't have any control over. That's my philosophy on art, though. It's not mine once it's released, right? Which is why, I don't believe in intellectual property. So.
Well, that much is clear. Otherwise, most of your work wouldn't actually exist.
Mm-hmm. And death to the author, right? Like how somebody interprets it is their business. You don't really like if they don't get what you've done, then maybe it's your fault. Right. It's half their problem and half your problem. That's two halves of communication, right?
Yeah, such is art, and such is communication, and such is propaganda, which I heard you refer to it as on a recent podcast appearance. What's the name of that podcast? And if people haven't gotten enough of your ramblings already, there's a 2.5-hour podcast of you rambling.
I did pretty good there, I think. I listened to it the other day, which is, I don't know how egotistical that is, but I wanted to know how crazy I sounded, and it sounded pretty sane, I think. There's a couple of moments where I, lost the plot, but yeah, the format is just, he's got a bit of a Joe Rogan kind of approach of just kind of
very
letting people go, give you enough rope to hang yourself. Yeah, it didn't bail me out once, actually. So.
What was the name of it?
League of Josh.
The League of Josh. Okay, we'll
Yeah.
put that on our show notes page,
Well, and
lastnighters.com/191.
all the podcasts I have are on my Mechanical Dream Revolution. All my podcast appearances are on my website. So there's about 14, and then there's like a couple of peppered other times I've cheated on you guys. So
Right. Yeah. Actually, my wife heard me listening to you last night on the other podcast. She's like, "Is that Mike C?" I'm like, "Yeah." And she's like, "Oh, are you jealous?"
different format.
I said, "No, I'm proud of our boy. He's getting out there." So we'll have that on show notes page and also on your website, Mechanical Dream Revolution, on which you have multiple appearances of being on our show.
Yeah.
And speaking of our show, you wanted to do Rain of Fire, but I boxed us in to this movie, Confessions of a Dangerous Mind. So in a future appearance, we will do Rain of Fire. But for this appearance, we're doing Confessions of a Dangerous Mind, of which I will pull up the Google description. And right on cue, Robert, if you could give me drum roll, please. Would want noise.
Squamp.
That's scats, but okay.
No, that was exactly what he asked for.
Beep, ba, 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 da, bo.
You ask, I deliver. What happens?
All right. So, Confessions of a Dangerous Mind, rated R, drama/romance, 1 hour, 53 minutes, came out in the year 2002. It is currently on Hulu and also available for purchase on streaming platforms. Got a 7.10, 7 out of 10 on the IMDb, 79% Rotten Tomatoes, 67% on the old Metacritic, and 79% of the Google users dig that pony. And the description reads, game show television producer Chuck Barris, played by Sam Rockwell, is at the height of his career. His creation, The Dating Game, is one of the network's top shows, and he has just been given the post of hosting his latest brainchild, The Gong Show. But what the public and industry bigwigs are unaware of is that Chuck Barris, game show pioneer, he is also a covert assassin. He works for the CIA and claims to have killed 33 people. No Masonic references here, I'm sure. Release date, December 31st, 2002. Directed by George Clooney and penned by Mr. Charlie Kaufman. Also starring Sam Rockwell, George Clooney, Drew Barrymore, and Julia Roberts, with appearances like biographical or talking head appearances by Chuck Barris and other people who were participants in the shows that he ran back in the day. Robert, your take on the Confessions of a Dangerous Mind with your opening.
So yeah, this is like a autobiography. So all autobiographies need to be taken with a heavy dose of salt, right? Take it with a dose of salt, right? Treat it with kid gloves. What metaphor am I missing here?
A grain of salt, pinch of salt, you throw it over your shoulder or something,
Yeah,
or you
throw
pour
some
it on
grains
slow.
over your shoulder.
It's a grain of salt. It sanitizes the poison you're drinking.
There you go. Sanitize some poison. So
I don't know,
that's
like
wait,
basically.
Is that why people put it into Bud Light?
I don't know why anyone would drink that, but
Make
I
a
think
margarita,
I think
a
they do it
limerita?
because Bud Light. I think the reason they drink Bud Light is because they generally get monopolies on sporting events.
Or they're health conscious. All right.
Is that-
No more interruptions. Robert, you're opening.
So it's a fun flick. I found it quite fun. I thought the narrative, I thought Clooney, whoever cut and edited this thing, did a fun job of interweaving the two narratives, the narratives of the love story and then the narrative of his career in show business with the different shows, and then the narrative with the secret agent stuff, the hitman stuff. I thought all those three things blended together quite well to give you a picture of this guy who is troubled, to say the least. I enjoyed how he was a guy that was initially raised to be a woman by his mother, which we've seen a lot of lately, of transitioning children that are called one thing by one parent and another thing by another parent. Usually it's the mother that wants to have the kid be transitioned and the father is resisting it, but that's just what I've seen. Maybe there's other stuff too, I don't know. But it's messed him up. And now I mean, maybe he's messed up anyway, but I'm sure it didn't help matters. But now he enjoys killing people for, I don't know, stress relief, to get his mind right. When he's going through anything, he goes off and treats it like, how somebody would go exercise or do something else, but instead he goes and kills people. I think it's fun to see or to think about this movie as if whether or not this actually even happened. Like, the movie is sprinkled with interviews of people who knew him, and they were all in the dark. They heard the rumors, or maybe they found out after the fact, or they heard about it after the fact, and they were all very much like, oh, I don't know, maybe I never saw any of that, blah blah blah. Maybe he disappeared for days at a time. Nobody knew where he was, but that's not necessarily too out of the ordinary for some hotshot Hollywood producer guy. So I lean on the of, yeah, it probably is true. He doesn't strike me as the type of person that necessarily. It's a very complicated, intricate lie. And not to say that people don't tell complicated, intricate lies, but usually you're doing that to get something. Maybe it just doesn't add up that this would be this massive lie that he would come out with later on and say, oh yeah, by the way, I mean, nobody seemed to know him as a habitual liar, and I think you would need to be in order to be lying about this. I could be wrong. Maybe he's duping me too. I don't know, but I tend to think that this is a true thing. Maybe he's fudging the details, or maybe he doesn't quite recall the details. And I'm sure a lot of the details were changed in the movie, like it said. But I tend to think that this is a fairly accurate portrayal of this man, and I found it quite interesting. And I thought the movie was quite well done. The acting is all fantastic. I think Rockwell he's not in his most charming persona. He's doing his best Chuck Barris impersonation. So there's that. He's kind of an asshole. But Barrymore and Clooney with his fake mustache, I thought, we're all really entertaining when they were on camera. And then, of course, Julia Roberts was a lot of fun. So that whole crew, that whole like Ocean's crew with a few others, they're all people that enjoy working with each other, and they're a lot of fun to see on camera. So I had a good time with this one.
Yeah, Ocean's 11 came out right before this, and so that's probably where that connection with Julia Roberts came about. And I heard that she took this work, and so did Drew Barrymore, at less than their normal amount.
Like as a favor,
as a favor to Clooney, because the budget wasn't going to support all of them making the money that they would normally make. And I guess this went through a lot of kind of a development hell. Like, lots of different directors were signed on, lots of different leads were going to be playing Chuck Barris, and it finally came together after years and years of development. And Clooney took the helm, I think, after one of the directors finally dropped out, and they were still pretty far along in the process, and Clooney wanted to try his hand at it. And I think he does a fairly capable job here. I found that in my take that this is a movie that I would probably need to watch again to fully grasp what was going on, because when I first watched it, it was just so kind of scattered that it was hard to know like what it was trying to tell me. So I almost needed to see the whole thing and then come back and approach it again with an awareness of like kind of what the bones of the story are. And I think maybe I'd like it better in a second viewing. But that's just my take, on the early part here.
Yeah, I like this as like a one and done movie. Like it's a really good character sketch. It's competently filmed, acted. The script is good. The editing's solid. I mean, some of the J and L cuts obviously confused you a bit, but yeah, like this is completely unexpected. When I saw that Clooney had even directed this, I was kind of flabbergasted because I hate pretty much everything he makes. So yeah, it's interesting. Pretty solid film, honestly, and anything that's got a beginning, middle, and end, I can really enjoy. Uh, yeah, it's a biopic, but with a certain sort of tone or flair to it that makes it a lot more consumable. Goes down pretty easy. And yeah, you can watch it multiple times, but for the most part, you can kind of just enjoy most of it. It's quite linear and blatant, and they don't at the point where you're like, why is this guy so fucked up? That kind of dropped the mother dressing him up stuff at the very end to kind of like give you a emotional climax or something, or sort of unlock the secret of this guy.
Well,
And like I said, that's all.
I thought the secret was more that his father was a serial killer, and that they
That's
thought there
part of
was
it
like
for
a
sure. So that's the
genetic
one. So
component.
those are the bookends, right? So he's got fucked up DNA, and then also his mother fucked up his nurturing. I think that like just the antecedent stuff, like where they establish like that's Michael Cera playing him as a child, by the way, as 8 and 11.
very young Michael Cera.
Yeah. But the second he said like, and then my life became basically a comedy of errors chasing pussy. I kind of identified with, because you're just sort of, when you're not emotionally stable, like where you don't get the sense of safety from your parents, you are looking outside yourself for validation, and as a man, that tends to be how we do it, right? So I sort of identified with that, and then I was kind of on the hook for listening to that guy's story, and yeah, I mean, like I said, it doesn't ask a lot of you. It hints at a bit of stuff, like it touches on the CIA and Operation Mockingbird and stuff, but it never really,
Well,
just sort of hints at it.
and the degradation of Western society.
Yeah, in a way,
With
yeah,
the
it sort
Dawn
of blames
Show.
TV for sure.
Yeah.
Without like position though, in a way, it almost says that like, oh, he's the victim for people hating him, and his pornographic television are victimizing him. It's sort of how they frame it. So that's the thing about being like sort of a black pilled libertarian. It's like I can't really enjoy media anymore. So the reason I like, because I was watching it, is like neck deep in a painting move thing with my sister and stuff, and like I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna watch like movies tonight and get drunk, and this is like number 2 of a triple feature. And then I messaged you, and I said, I think you'd like this movie because it is just straightforward, simple storytelling from a time where you could sort of make a movie like that, I guess. But I don't think that trans shit would fly anymore. The idea of blaming his mother for his sort of psychosexual his psychopathy.
Right. Finding the cathartic release in killing
Well,
people.
and then he's also like a womanizer too, right? Like, and it isn't because like from some MRA perspective of like he's an alpha and he needs to dominate. He needs to be validated, and he can't open himself up and be vulnerable the entire movie to somebody that's, I mean, she's hippie as it gets and completely accepting. So,
Yeah,
but
I found Drew Barrymore's character a little overly accepting and almost to the point of unbelievable. But
well, they just no, I just there's people like that, and she's a bit out there, so it would almost get annoying how ungrounded she is. But if you could accept somebody like that, it would be quite a good balance for somebody that's like has such control issues that he needs to go and kill people. That would be her. She didn't exist either, right? Like she's an amalgamation of a bunch of ex-wives that he had. He didn't have the love story. So,
oh, okay. Yeah.
but Do we want to talk about the reality or the story? Right, story is kind of nicer.
Yeah, and that's what we see in the movie, of course. One point I wanted to make mention of is the sort of arm's length approach when Clooney's CIA guy approaches Barris and is like, "Hey, I want you to be kind of a independent contractor, freelance, but we'll deny all knowledge of this
Yeah,
relationship." And it's just an example of how they can get their bidding done, but on the surface they can say, "Well, that wasn't us. We disavow."
yeah,
That
yeah,
we weren't the ones to do that. And it reminded me of how the media, social media companies these days will carry out at the behest of government
yeah.
actors
I mean, I'm
things that the government isn't supposed to be doing. And
I'm
yet
pretty sure
it's
the government was the angel investor on a lot of those monopolies.
right, but it gives them that sort of like, what's the right word? It's in
Plausible
name
deniability.
only. Well, yeah, but it's also like the in name only like
Yeah,
cover.
it's a facade. It's a facade, and it's the privatization of oppression and censorship, which is fantastic. Because, I mean, censorship is just the second page of a Google search, right? So like, because the consumer's been the consumer slash voter is trained or educated by the state, right? So it's like we're not really taught. Like a lot, like people aren't unintelligent. We're just it's amazing to people. Like you talk to them and they're like, oh, what, the reality is that? And I'm like, yeah, it's like there's lithium in Afghanistan, that's why we're there. There's opium. We're not going there to free anybody.
Right.
It's
I
just
remember seeing an article saying there was $1 trillion worth of rare earth minerals in
yeah,
Afghanistan.
yeah, I said that in fucking 2002. Nobody listened to me. So it's like yeah, and so it's just what were we talking about though? Oh well.
Oh, just the political cover in the
Oh,
literal
the
terms of
outsourcing.
terminology. Yeah.
Yeah, we're farming out these things, and that's the beauty of a so-called capitalist system, a neo-capitalist, a
Right.
neoliberal sort of capitalist, because like especially with all the lockdown stuff, right? Like the media does the heavy lifting, and then the consumer wants the company to oppress half the customers, you know, or a third of them. So if you can convince everybody that the air outside is dangerous, then you can get the companies to do all sorts of things. You can run the small businesses out of order, and but like this is the 60s, 70s. This takes place
Yeah.
in.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. This goes
Oh,
through several
uh,
periods, and
a
apparently they shot those different periods in different styles to
little
represent
bit,
those
yeah.
periods, which didn't really stand out to me. But I read about it later. It's like, okay, I could sort of see that.
Yeah, a little. I feel like he could have pulled the trigger on that a bit more.
Yeah.
Put his foot on the gas might be a better
I think in the early
metaphor.
stuff there were some really tight shots where the it seems like lots of things were like super cropped, and I don't know if that was a stylistic thing, like to try to determine that period, or it was to make you feel a bit claustrophobic and trapped as this character was, because they're intersplicing
Yeah,
like
that
him
was what
being
I
in that
noticed.
hotel room
That was
with
what I noticed more than the periods. I didn't really notice the periods so much as when he's participating in like these assassinations, like for the CIA and stuff. The angles open up,
right.
and when he meets a Penny naked with the fridge, there's a wider shot, and it's like less claustrophobic. So that's what I noticed, but I didn't. Yeah, I guess the color scheme kind of gets darker and grayer as you go on. But I wouldn't say that those are periods so much as a continuum of just this fucking perspective getting shittier and shittier.
Yeah, and it does seem to jump around a lot. Like it goes, it's like telling this almost linear story, but it also has him doing his aviator impression, Howard Hughes impression, where he's locked
Mm.
himself in the hotel room. And so there's like that's present day roughly, and he's
Yeah, yeah.
flashbacking to all of these events that lead up to that. And then of course, for whatever reason, he by the end determines to clean himself up. And I don't know if it's because he's like figured out who the mole is. Like he had been in that hotel room hiding because Clooney told him that he was at risk because the mole was gonna kill him.
I think it
Like,
was
that part got fuzzy to me.
well,
Yeah, I'm
visually
not clear on the timeline on that. Are we saying that
he
the
has the
actual end of the
flashbacks.
film is the end, or is him typing up the autobiography the end, where he finally finishes that last page?
Yeah, it does kind of move around a little bit, but I think that he went to the hotel, had the breakthrough with his past, and then we get to see his mom dressing him up, and then he comes to terms and accepts that, and then goes and kills Roberts, and then marries Penny, I think. But maybe I don't know. Maybe it's like an unreliable narrator where that's just what he wanted. He never really got it or something. I don't know. But I think in the literal timeline of the movie, it goes the bookends of him naked and trying to come to terms with everything, and then all that stuff in the between, and then he has the sort of revelation, accepts himself a bit more, cleans himself up because he wants the agency of going and killing, this mole, and then he's kind of free after that to right, to pursue. So Roberts at the same time represents the agency and the seeking out this parental figure that's going to let him go kill people, and all of the psychotic behavior that he needs to indulge himself in a sense of an addiction, and also the way he's been chasing like women for self, like to earn self-respect and self-love his whole life, all is sort of put onto that character that he can then murder or kill and then be free of, because he's free of the CIA at that point. He's free of all of the shit that's been dragging him down his whole life, and then after that he's able to go marry Penny, which is what's going to satisfy him, I guess.
Yeah. So Robert, is that how you read it? That's how I read it. I read that he was in the hotel room letting his hair grow out and acting like a hermit, and then he had this epiphany and cleaned himself up to then go meet up with Julia Roberts because he'd figured out that she was the mole, and then he did the old Sicilian trick, swapping
the switcheroo. Yeah,
the old switcheroo. Of course, I would put the poison wine in front of myself. It's the oldest trick of the book.
Well, he switched it, and then she switched it back. It's
a classic
Right.
spy versus spy.
Actually, I remember because I watched that. I watched it like back when you could just like stream movies for free really easily on computers. You didn't have to search too much. I remember watching that in like 2003 or something, and I had to rewind that scene. So, wait, what? You know what I mean? Because of the math,
Yeah.
I couldn't do the math in my head right away.
Yeah, when I saw it, I was like, wait a minute, she switched it back. So isn't he,
Yeah, I know, but he made it look like he switched it, and I just like, wow, what a move.
Okay, all right, and then the fake out to get her to confess, which I thought was cool.
Yeah, no, it was all really good. So it was like he was being legitimately confident. So there's like a real masculinity in that too, right? Like he's got agency, and he is the spy. He is the cool James Bond that he was trying to like become, which is ultimately like an ego trip to try to ignore your own internal problems, right? So yeah, I liked it. I liked the movie. I don't know how much libertarian shit's in there.
A lot.
Yeah, I mean, there's the CIA. We hate them.
Kill people. They what was it? They were making the world safe for democracy. Is the propaganda? What they
democracy is the disease, not the vaccination.
Yeah, when he took out that guy in Mexico who must have been a political leader or of some influence to quell whatever that nascent movement was. And then they had him doing stuff in East Germany and Finland, which I thought that was kind of interesting that they used the game show and the prize winning as cover for where he was going to be going. And so then they picked all these like totally unappealing places. Like, you want a trip to beautiful West Berlin in winter.
Yeah, ridiculous. But it'd be cheap. I like that they touched on the idea that maybe somebody's career in media is influenced by the government or, deep state kind of activity.
Oh, right,
They
because
don't get,
Clooney did give him a
yeah.
few, like, "Hey, it might work."
Well, I think he set that up too on the back end.
Yeah.
I think he had connections to, and that's Operation Mockingbird, right? Is to influence the message without being, on the hook for it. So it's like, it's that whole sticks and carrots, right? You can get somebody to kind of give your messaging, because like that's how especially with social media, where it's like you get the dopamine of attention, if you behave properly, if you say the right dogma,
And do you
but
think it's
back
still
then,
happening like this today,
well, I
or is
think
it
the
more
media is
overt?
just locked down completely now it's just a cabal. There's no, that's why they're not able to produce anything of like creative or artistic value, because they all they know how to do is own things. They have no creative potential. That's why everything sucks
Well, they're also hemmed in a little bit by the culture that's
that they
become
created.
unfunny and humorless, and
Yeah.
then also the influence of what China wants.
Yeah, that's fair, but yeah, so they painted themselves into a corner, right?
Hmm.
I think the major thing is that they, like, what they used to do is take creative people and like sort of enslave them into the system, right? Because the distribution, we pay the distribution side of media, we don't pay the creative side, which is why there's such a heavy emphasis on intellectual property law, because you just duplicate something and give it away for free. So they pay the guys, $5 for their songs, or, $100 for their movies or whatever, but all the creative energy is coming out of people that they're swindling, and then eventually it dries up, because like, they've locked the whole system down. They've got, like, the Marvel sort of mentality of just making, like, I don't know. It's like Call of Duty, right? Where they just reskin the same game over and over.
Yeah.
Like, we're
Now,
getting the same content over
right.
and over with the same messaging. Now, I don't like, I mean, yeah, the SJW pandering aside, I just think that I don't even know how to say this.
Do you
Am I
think that
making
that
sense?
is? Yes, yeah, you are. That
Okay.
that feels like a long game kind of thing, and I don't know if what
Well,
we're
it might
seeing
just
today
be,
is a culmination, or if it's sort of slightly different in that the cathedral's narrative that we're seeing today is very much orchestrated with a here's what the official narrative is, and if anyone goes outside of this, they are to be shut down,
yeah.
banished, basically prohibited from speaking or being platformed. And it feels almost as if it's a bit of a natural offshoot of this previous thing, which was more of a molding
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah. So
phase.
it sticks and carrots, right? So like now they've got so much control that, like, if you go on your social media and you make, the wrong, if you don't regurgitate the right dogma, they'll attack you. You know what I mean? You don't get kicked off of Twitter for saying the wrong thing. You get kicked off of Twitter for not being a good delivery device for advertising. So if you've got 10,000 followers, it's not about really what you say, it's about whether or not you're on board with this sort of neoliberal capitalist, I don't know. It's like an unholy hybrid of centralization and capitalism, right? That we're sort of experiencing. So if
Right.
you're not on board with that, you're essentially running interference with all these monopolies. So it isn't even whether you speak out against them directly. It's just that you're there, and they'll find a reason to get rid of you and cancel you, because you're not working for them for free. You're
Yeah.
trying to use social media for yourself, which is not the purpose of what we have as social media. So, but like
Right.
like going back to the beginning, it was more about carrots, not sticks.
Now it's
It
mostly
was
sticks.
it was now your career will go well. Yeah, now it's locked down to the point where, like, and like I said, I think that's why there's no creativity.
Yeah. And it also feels like not only did that stage that we're in now come about rather onset rapidly, but after lots of like pre-development. But I think it even engaged an additional stage where it's not only the social media companies themselves that they've got the algorithms looking for keywords and terms and squelching speech, limiting speech, fact checking things with fact checks that are just bullshit. But they've got it to the point now where they've got so propagandized the other players in the game that they will now mob you, Twitter style, Facebook style, where they can promote anything under the sun and get virtue signal points and accolades for it. But if you deviate from that narrative or even pose a question, they will jump on you. And it's people I know doing this. It's not bots, and it's not.
No. We this is neoliberal capitalism. Is the consumer / voter becomes the message.
The enforcer. They're the enforcers.
Yeah. So and that's Quintez was talking about this a couple weeks ago. Like what to do now in terms of like how do you pursue liberty, right? And so it's like, well, because like the system has gotten to the point where the vast majority of people have become the enforcers. We've completely decentralized the enforcement. It's a brilliant thing, and it all started. I think Operation Mockingbird is that's why I like that they kind of touch on that a little bit in this movie. Like I don't know how Clooney made this movie. He's an absolute like piece of shit when it comes to this sort of topic, right? Like I don't know, but it was. Penny's character says a couple of odd things here and there about like the war, and like she says the odd little like sort of anarchist line here and there about like how it's all bullshit, which is interesting, right? Because it's like she's so carefree, so aloof, but she's like, that's it's anti-war. Like we're trying to stop the war here. Again, we're trying to stop the people in developing nations from being exploited by consumerism.
Right. So she was like the left anti-war kind of hippie
back in the day
angle of it. Yeah, which got co-opted. And I think they even talked about. Did they talk about in this movie that movement got infiltrated?
Julia Roberts mentions it. Yeah, that was her
that's exactly
infiltrating the peacenik movement by suggesting violent moves to discredit the movement. She said it was a lot of fun.
Verbatim. Yeah. Right. She literally said that. You're right.
Yeah. And I wonder if something like that might be echoing in present day. I don't know.
Well, it's been going on since the beginning.
All the time. Let's go and tell pro.
Like there was false flags back in the Greek city-states era. You know what I mean? Like we had, but media's gotten a lot more complex, but it's been the same few tricks.
Yeah, well, it wasn't like a current one, like the plot to kidnap the governor in Michigan, and like 80% of the plotters were
or how about the CIA, or I don't know, probably allegedly hashtag storm the Capitol. I mean, where did the hashtag come from? Nobody was talking about that, and then all of a sudden there's just like a bunch of fucking, I don't know how many of your clientele are MAGA people, but they're not the brightest. Like they are, Trump is essentially a misdirect.
Well, and there's a whole bunch of Fed people that have not been arrested or will not be arrested in relation to that.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, you take governance is often about focusing aggression, maybe in the wrong place.
Right. Yep, and fomenting the what you call it, destabilization. And Bezmenov, he talks about that quite a bit. You've got some Bezmenov in at least one of your songs, maybe two.
Started and ended with it. So episode 12 does a bunch of callbacks to Boys Will Be Boys, which everyone loved, right? So the Boys Will Be Boys parts 1 and 2, everybody I got a lot of really good feedback from that, right? Because it kicks ass. And then I expanded on some ideas and got sort of more of a feminine kind of tones and explorations, some more some world building and some like more intellectual stuff. And then I came back to the sort of romantic, aggressive stuff. But for episode 12, I brought back, I think The Right Opinion was a YouTuber that I used in that one, right? And Yuri.
Yeah, and Yuri's great. I'll put direct links to the songs where you have Yuri in, and I've also put one of Yuri's talks. He defected from the USSR back in the late 70s or early 80s, and he used to give presentations about
Yeah,
how
no,
there was this.
there's tons. There's
Yeah,
tons.
and
Yeah.
it's really good stuff, and it's like very prescient. It's like you watch this stuff and you're like, he was saying this in 1982, 1983, and you see it play out over the last 10, 15 years, and it's just
Yeah.
amazing. So I'll put that on the show notes page. Also, I saw an interview with Jim Brewer of Half Baked, the stand-up comedian guy. Dude is
Okay.
fucking red pilled, man. It's amazing. Robert, I think I sent it to you. It's
They
on
sent it to me
Compound
too.
Media, and it's so good. He mentions Yuri Bezmenov. He talks about the Rwandan genocide and how the Belgians basically went in there and uh, started picking, two sides. I guess they started dividing the people and got them to commit genocide against each other. And then he was also on a Joe Rogan episode recently where he's talking for like 3 or 4 hours with Rogan. It's super good. So I'll put those on the show notes page. I was very heartened to hear what he had to say, and that he goes around doing his stand-up tours and he talks about this stuff, and
So
people
is
are cheering.
the new version of who was Alex Jones before he was Alex Jones? What's the
Oh, Bill Hicks?
Bill
No.
Hicks? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I love that's one of my favorites actually. So he's like the new Bill Hicks slash
George Carlin style. A
yeah,
little bit.
thank you. So
Yeah,
if you
yeah,
could
a little
just
bit.
fill all the proper nouns for me, then I think we'll be fine. So coming back to the movie though, so coming back to the movie, they do touch on like the degenerative or degeneracy of media and like the dating game and the Gong Show and how like it humiliates society in a way. I'm not sure I agree with that, but it does sort of connect his own psychological problems to this sort of pornographic train wreck media.
Yeah.
Well,
Producing them.
he was a populist, and he was
Yeah.
speaking to the lowest common denominator.
Yeah, but it's also it's
And
like it's degrading, right? It's degrading to say like to put people on stage just to ridicule them. It's
it's voyeuristic.
yeah, it's voyeuristic and it's yeah. So that's what I mean by pornographic. It's the fucking what's it called, Law and Order SVU and CSI and like all this murder porn and even the cooking channel.
Gawkers, rubberneckers.
It's a train wreck.
Just,
I mean, like, you can't not watch a train wreck. Yeah.
No, and it's like if you get to it now though, it's just like everything is like, I'm just gonna deglaze this pan with a quarter cup of red wine. I'm just gonna deglaze the fuck out of it. Yeah, right. It's just like everything has become saturated with this sense, this aesthetic, right? This hyper aesthetic. So it's just like it does get very exhausting, So he sort of they sort of touch on the subversive nature of media in this film. I'm just trying to bring it back to the movie, by the way.
No, I appreciate that. We need that.
And it just lightly though. They don't, and they almost mock that idea because like he's the victim in those exchanges when people are like, your ideas are subversive. It's almost like the movie's going like, that's a stupid accusation. He's just trying to make shows,
Yeah, well, I think there was a spectrum of it that kind of like went over time. Where initially the dating show, or was it the Newlywed Show? It was one of the shows where they were talking about like what they would do sexually, and they got pretty explicit, and the audience loved it. The live studio audience was like,
because it's hilarious, right?
Yeah, it was hilarious. And then he played it for the executives, and like, no, we can't do this one. And then the Newlywed Show, a similar thing where like, where's a very uncomfortable place? And they of course went, not the back of a Volkswagen.
The strangest place to make love, and she was like anal, and everyone laughed, right?
And I think that was the
that aired, by the way.
That aired, okay.
I believe it did.
That was more of the
well, it's the time too, right?
What was it? Was it live?
No, what I mean is that it was the opening up. So the first phase was the more hands-on, aggressive government. Like because they literally have the FCC guy there saying like, "Hey, you'll go to jail."
Right.
We'll bring the hammer down, and then it shows the progression of opening and becoming more liberal with media over time. So we're essentially losing our values
Right, because the
or
Gong Show
whatever.
gets to that place where people are upset because they are, in fact, bringing people on to make fun of them, and we see that echoed later on in things like American Idol, where
Mm.
the preliminary episodes of every season are we did the open
Yeah, and it's
in
down to a
LA
science.
and
They do all the cringe, and
mhm.
then they give you a couple of sad piano people. Where like they literally, because they don't have time, they're just like, here's sad piano. And he's like, oh, I used to make gingerbread houses with my dad, and now he's dead, right, or something. And they play. It's like it's so refined to the point where it's or systematic. I don't know how to describe it, but it's just it's on rails,
The
right?
cookbook's been written. Yeah.
Yeah,
They're
and it's
following a
just
recipe.
it's horrific. Like it's disgusting. I'd rather have the Gong Show. I like the honesty of the Gong Show, and I don't think it's that subversive. I could see somebody understand, or I can understand why somebody might have the view that it's a humiliating experience for society. But I don't. If we can embrace it, as long as you're not making fun of like some guy with Down syndrome. Do you know what I mean? Like that's kind of a bit too far for me, but
Right, and wasn't there a guy who was so famously bad on the first season or two of American Idol, and he actually came back for like the second season, and then he released
Samo Hung
albums.
or Hung something Hung.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and
it
and he
sounds like
He
a
actually
sang like a
manufactured.
song, and it was so horrifically bad. He became famous. He went viral. Yeah.
and I
I
think he sold albums, millions of them, and
by being
then
bad.
yeah, by just being terrible.
Oh, he was atrocious. Yeah, he couldn't actually sing.
So, again, this is media trying to like keep a rein on what social media would become if it was allowed to actually be social.
Right. Back when it was the Wild West and you can say almost anything, I think I enjoyed it a lot more.
Well, you look at Bo Burnham, man. Like there's like a lot of people came out of that era that were just fucking around on YouTube, producing their
Mhm.
own stuff, and they had access to a platform, and they could explore their artistic ideas. And you still get that with some people, but like for very limited scope of conversation. Like if I'm analyzing art or I don't know architecture or something, I could probably get some small YouTube followership or following.
Well,
As long
it
as I
depends
don't.
on the architecture there, Mike. Um,
Yeah,
I mean, I think we're at risk of getting shut down. We've lost a channel a couple of years ago, and our friend Pat McFarland at Liberty Weekly, he got a strike recently. Our other,
McFarlane.
yeah, and
He
our other
doesn't.
friend,
He just talks about law.
yeah, and apparently that's taboo these days. Also, our friend from Peddling Fiction lost his YouTube channel. He got nuked the other day.
Ah, Jesus, I didn't even think because I thought you guys were a bit too like it's libertarianism. It's not. You guys are arguing with the minutia of the NAP half the time. Like it's not. That shouldn't offend anybody.
Yeah. Well, I feel
Like
like our
you're not
last
getting in the
episode,
way, huh?
on American History X,
Oh, I didn't.
I know I self-censored. I know that there was a lot more I could have said.
Yeah, I'm a little appalled that I wasn't
I didn't.
invited to that one or Running Man. I just gotta say, the guest
Save,
was pretty cool. He seemed like
save
a
it
cool
for a
guy.
Rain of Fire, buddy.
Yeah, I'm trying to include that because it's got a lot of stuff about masculinity in it, right? But
Do you think
instead of
Yeah.
doing that movie,
Like
we're
fighting a
doing.
dragon with an axe. Why not?
And McConaughey's all yoked out? Hell yeah.
So is Bale though. We're
I was
not
about to
talking
say,
about that movie right now, though. We're talking about the stupid Confessions of a Dangerous Mind you wanted to watch that you weren't even able to watch because of the streaming service you
Well, I won't say
had
I
problems
wasn't
with.
able to watch it. I was saying that it was like kind of messed up in the first 10 or 15 minutes.
Yeah. So I do think that is the editing choice because there's a lot of compressed information to get us to where we want to be, and then yeah, it's a parallel between him wanting to get into a fight and having no sense of like intimacy or responsibility with women. Like he's not able to be vulnerable. She tells him he's pregnant, and he just like this ain't me, right? Because his parents sucked.
Yeah.
So
And the only reason
and
it worked with Penny was because she was persistent and stuck with him
yeah, that's how
until
you
he could.
heal. You heal with people together, right? Is um That's the thing. That's what I like about the mass trauma that's kind of happening right now. There's a lot of potential because like the only way, because the entire family is usually fucked up, right? Like it's a cascade failure across the board with everybody because we take kids away from their parents during their formative psychological development, for one, right? And there's this mass sort of hysteria and mass psychosis going on, you know? So the only way to sort of heal that is collectively at the same time. Because the problem is you start doing better for yourself, and then the people around you that you are, you know, that are you is your support circle are going to pull you down with their trauma, you know?
Crabs in a
Actually,
bucket.
Loki literally just touched on this. I didn't expect Disney to make something so real, but they basically took the character of Loki and examined the trauma and like what his motivations are as a evil person.
Yeah, I
And
found that series to be pretty good.
yeah,
It
I
made
mean,
me
this is the
want to see it
parasitic.
again.
Well, here that's the problem is the parasitic storytelling is always they set up, they earn your trust, and then they flip the script on you.
Yeah.
So
Look
season
out for
2
season.
will be about like how I don't know how it's okay to inject children with hormone therapy, I guess, or something, right? Like it'll flip the script for sure. But I really enjoyed that first season because we had just gotten to Joker before all this shit went down, and people were just starting to like legitimately address mental illness and how like normalized this trauma is for people, like how fucked up everybody is. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And how brutal civilization and society is on people's minds, and like how there's no facet to express this shit. And then they outlawed hugs and smiles. You
Right.
know, like
I
the next
heard
day.
I heard that the Pediatric Association, I forget the specific name of it, but they actually recently scrubbed their website of any reference to the development of children in needing to see facial expression.
That sounds like something.
They memory hold it.
Yeah, yeah. So you can't rely. You need to build it all from the ground up, right? So, but I do like that this movie touches on, you know, like, you know, maybe somebody trying to do well in the that has some good creative potential. Maybe they get a helping hand from people that want him to tweak that message a little bit or to work for them. Because
Yeah.
it doesn't just end. It doesn't just end with him making the dating game and the wedding newlywed game. It ends with him influencing other parts of Hollywood over time as well, right? Like stuff he didn't produce. You know, because you know if everybody's going to the same bars and and country clubs and stuff like that, or they're investing, you know, it's a cabal that forms over time. So you can kind of influence society that way, and it's sort of humanity against the media in a way. In that sense, I was just trying to bring it back to the movie as well, but
Yeah. So, Robert, I want to get anything that you want to input here because we are actually near the end where we're going to need to start giving a number of bangs of the gong out of 10.
Oh well, yeah. I didn't take any notes on this one. I just had a good time watching it. I knew if we had Mike C on, I would spend most of the time just trying to understand what he's saying, which I appreciate because he's like some kind of genius, and I just feel like, you know, a little
Jesus,
bit
that's
dumb around the guy, just a
oh
little
I
bit.
don't oh that's high praise. Thank you. I guess.
So I feel like I'm learning, more times than I actually can contribute, which is fine. I don't mind taking a back seat on these kind of episodes, not at all. I actually enjoy it. Take the load off. So I don't have a lot of interesting points to say or anything like that. I think we should get into the final summaries.
Okay. Well, I do have one question, and that is, was it clear to either of you what happened in the final Clooney scene where he's sitting on the diving board? Because I read about it later, and you see the blood in the water, and you see Barris
Right.
come out with a firearm because somebody's like in his yard,
Oh,
right?
you thought he might have shot him? It was confusing.
Well, in in the reading of it, it was he dies there, but
Yeah.
Barris didn't shoot him. It was the mole.
Yeah.
But it's in the movie and watching it, it's unclear what's going on there, other than Clooney's just there and warns Barris, and then there's blood in the water, but you don't actually see Clooney die. So in watching the movie, it didn't make sense to me.
Right, like that was metaphorical of him dying somewhere else.
No,
later?
no, no. It's. I think it was just kind of confusing because like you're not sure what's going on because there's not a lot of telegraphing. There's a little bit. There's like a couple of like score cues. There's kind of a summary like, okay, well, and he's talking weird, right? He's talking slow.
Yeah.
But
And he's divulging all the information about why he got selected.
yeah.
So it's sort of the apex of the plot, right? This is what ties everything together. This is what makes sense of the preceding events.
Yeah, so like in a sense from a, if you want to do an libertarian sort of wash of it, like it talks about how basically the state selects traumatized individuals for the wet work that they need.
The
And
Manchurian
how
Candidate.
Yeah. But he could have been a candidate for, just to become the next Picasso or something. Or more of a Van Gogh, but you know what I mean. I don't know. Yeah, that scene didn't. I could see how it might be confusing, but I didn't. I was kind of just along for the ride at that point the first time I watched it. And so on my second and third viewing, I was like, okay, well, I know what's happening now. But the first time I watched it, I was like, I feel like I have a sense that something's wrong, and there's tension. Like one of these guys is going to kill each other, and then about halfway through the conversation, I go, well, he's dying. So he's already been killed, I guess.
Yeah,
But like it does make sense. It is pretty subtle in a lot of ways. So it's
I mean, in retrospect, now that we're talking about it, is it that the mole was going to kill Barris, but then Clooney was there to stop it?
Oh, like
He got
you want to know what the like the what's it called? The conspiracy, like what actually happened. Yeah, I think she killed him because that was the next logical person to kill on the list, and maybe to stop them from talking to each other.
But they are in Barris's backyard.
If he's been killed by the mole, then why doesn't he divulge who the mole is at that point?
I don't think he knew. I think he went there to kill Barris because he thought Barris was the mole, and she killed him.
What?
Yes,
Some
so unclear.
Silenced sniper shot? What?
I don't
starts
know.
bleeding.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it is a bit of a little loosey-goosey on the old plot, but yeah, presumably, or maybe I don't know. Yeah, that's a shot. It would have been better if there was a shot.
Yeah, Clooney does say that he at some point thought that Barris was the mole, right?
And Julia confirms that, or at least that's her story.
Right. Yeah, he says that.
Okay. So presumably he's going to kill Barris, and then Roberts kills him. And I guess we have a problem with the fact that, like, how would she have done that without Barris hearing a gunshot or seeing it? Right? Maybe he was stabbed.
Well, and then why not kill Barris too?
If he was stabbed, surely you're seeing the person stabbing you.
Yeah, fuck if I know, man.
Okay. Anyway,
why wouldn't he tell him, right?
Yeah, why wouldn't he tell him? Oh, by the way, Julia Roberts stabbed me just like 5 minutes ago.
Or shot me. So it's gotta be a shot, a silenced or a suppressed shot in the back or something.
Okay, and just coincidental timing that they both happen to show up there.
Well, she would have been tracking him.
Okay.
So that's reasonable. What's not reasonable is that he didn't hear a suppressed shot. Like just a pop.
Or why wouldn't she just then take out Barris as well?
Yeah, kill them both. Why not both of them?
Yeah. Well, he had a gun in his hand, I guess.
If you're hiding in the bushes with a silenced, suppressed rifle. Anyway.
Speaking of suppressors and and crazy dome shots while you're standing on a boat firing a 22 at CIA operatives. When was the last time you guys saw a shooter?
I've never
The
seen
movie
that
Shooter with Wahlberg.
Oh my god, oh man. All right, it's like a left-wing fucking anti-government power fantasy. You got to watch it. That's my recommendation. My recommendation for those of you that want to know what I feel about Confessions of a Dangerous Mind are watch Shooter from 2007.
Okay.
Do we have to do a rating? Black and gold.
I think Robert had a question. He was trying to.
I
slip
do. I've been trying to ask a question for the past 10 minutes. It's okay. So, from what I understand, the movie makes it seem like Clooney recruits Barris kind of out of happenstance, but we're not sure. Either out of happenstance or his role in the CIA is to find people to recruit. But my question is do you think that this is a normal thing, or is this like an abnormal thing? Like, I can understand the idea where you would want outside contractors, so you'd have plausible deniability, so you could, disavow whenever they do anything that you don't want, or if you ever get caught, basically, right? But it seems like a risk to go with kind of, I mean, I'm sure they do their homework, find out all they can about people and blah, blah, blah. But when you are just approaching some guy in a bar, even if you've done your homework, if you've been watching him for a few weeks, would you rather recruit somebody who's, even if they fit the profile, who is a fairly unknown quantity versus somebody who, applies to the CIA, right? Like, they have no shortage of people applying to federal government positions.
Yeah, but those people might tell on you. Like, what's the risk of hiring a rando?
All kinds of risks.
Okay, what are the risks then? Like, he tells on
Goes
you?
public, right?
Who's going to believe him?
Everybody who watched this movie. Everybody read the book.
Yeah, but I mean, there's no proof, right? Like, I went to
There's
Cuba and murdered a guy on behalf of the states. Okay. Did you?
Yeah, you can
Did you have any
verify
corroborating evidence? What?
You can verify whether the guy died mysteriously or what.
Yeah, I mean, but I could claim that. You know what I mean? I'm just saying there's not a lot of proof there. There isn't a lot of liability for the state, and you can just kill the guy the second you don't want to use him anymore. The moment he starts looking iffy, you can kill him. You can just use a guy for one round.
Okay, so you're basically saying is that you think this is a standardized method for getting people in as hitman in the CIA.
It seems efficient.
And efficient. How is it efficient to troll bars all the time and then do your background?
You have to do a bit of research, but the training and the psychopathy would come from society. So you just got to find the right psychos that have been produced, and you recruit them, and you can just dispose of them. So it depends on, I mean, the cost benefit analysis. It's like the problem with having a government employee as opposed to a contract is that you have like all of the patriotism. I think a whistleblower is more likely to come from within the government than as a private contract.
And they often aren't believed either.
Well, my point is that they're privy to more information, though. If you come up in the CIA, like Snowden style, right? Like, you are part of that system. So because the CIA doesn't just do all the clandestine shit, they also do all the stuff that they are supposed to do, right? And so you're in that system, and then they try to recruit you from there. That's way more dangerous than picking a guy up in a bar and saying, "Hey, can you go to Cuba and shoot this guy?" To me,
a famous movie producer. I mean, I get he wasn't a famous TV producer at the time.
I mean, that makes the story a little less believable, I suppose. But I mean, I see what you're saying. I just think it would be a very efficient way to find fucking psychos, people that are on the edge, based on their profiling,
Yeah, and then if they did turn on you, they wouldn't be believed anyway.
Well, they wouldn't speak either. You would just kill them.
Yeah, they disappear.
So I don't know.
I
Like,
don't. I find
maybe picking a guy with a fucking that's producing television shows is maybe a bit uh outlandish, brazen.
Okay, so in your mind, there are hundreds of CIA agents across the country trolling bars, looking for psychopaths to become.
Well, you can do it with an algorithm now, right? And they don't have to even. Well, now they can just make up terrorists and arrest them in the same day by trolling them on the internet. So I'm not sure. I see what you mean, though. Yeah, I think it comes back to what we were talking about earlier by decentralizing the enforcement process, right? Like you let society do the work for you by urging it in certain directions. So like if our school system is producing shooters, then you can then just take those guys and put them and train them a little bit and then put them in a situation that you know where you want something done. I don't know.
right,
That's
and then
that's what I don't think it's that like unrealistic.
through a
I think
little
it's
bit of wordplay, you can say that you're not actually violating anything.
well, they're not.
Right.
They're legally not, probably.
Yeah. Now, Robert, in your opening, I think you said that you thought that this was perhaps a true story. In the reading I did, very limited reading, like Wikipedia level, I think it was later revealed by Barris that he wrote the story, he wrote the book, but it's not true events.
So
Oh,
you
really?
never killed anybody.
Right.
You never worked for the CIA.
Per the Wikipedia, and take it for what it's worth.
33?
Yeah, 33.
That's a weird number to claim. Again, yeah, so, ties to the media, Illuminati shit.
To what end?
To what end? To have an
Talk this
interesting
massive lie.
Well, often they will like normalize certain behavior through story by spinning it a little bit, right? So this is an outlandish story, and it's a character story that victimizes the protagonist, right? So his work for the CIA was essentially him being victimized, or exploited. So in that sense, it sort of spins the idea of them doing that in something a bit more realistic. To your point about like how it doesn't make sense to do that, right? But it makes sense to do it in a way that like is slightly not quite as outlandish.
Well, I could see somebody doing this, writing this book as a almost performance piece, like a Andy Kaufman style. Like, is it real? Is it not real?
Yeah. Or it could be halfway to Kubrick's, Apollo 11 confession, so-called confession in The Shining. But one thing it does do stories like this is it does sort of normalize and spin the idea of it happening, because it's like a soft, playful version of what that might look like in reality. Or how the media does get involved with government and agencies. No?
I just don't. I mean, to Daniel's point that this is all made up. I don't necessarily buy it. It just seems so out of left field for a guy who made like The Dating Game and wrote Palisades Park to then come out with a book saying, "Oh, by the way, I've been a secret agent and I've been murdered 33 people." It just doesn't seem to fit in his body of work. I'll just put it that way.
Oh yeah, that's fair.
Right.
Again, like, so that would be my sort of final conclusion then, is that it's spin work, right? It's like if it is propaganda, if it is messaging, the message is like this happened once and it happened this way. Don't look for the other versions of that that are in the thousands. That, like, I mean, in abstract, I'm not really supporting my position very well, but that makes sense.
Well, I read
know.
it without knowing much about the guy other than what's presented in the movie. He's a guy who's done all of these things, but then probably also done mountains of cocaine and had severe bouts of paranoia. And
Yeah.
so I could see somebody concocting
Yeah.
this story and committing it to paper as a therapeutic, even to try to, recover from whatever psychosis or separation from reality they were experiencing, trying to document it. I think he even makes mention of it in the movie, like that he'd start documenting things, writing things down as a way of releasing them or something like that. And that's what turned into this book.
Yeah, at the beginning he talked about how like that might redeem him is writing a no holds bars account of his life to try to compensate him for being meaningless. So
Yeah, I don't know. During the movie, he talks about his self-hatred, and for someone who accomplished so much, and I'm sure he's got issues like everyone does, but you almost need to feel guilty about something really, really bad to hate yourself and loathe yourself that much. If indeed that part is true, maybe that part's not true. Maybe he's super proud of himself. I don't know, but
no, yeah, no. That's the thing. Is like he might have done some other shit that is more in line with media people.
I
He
don't know.
might have been an abuser of some kind, right? So
Yeah,
which
there's
would
stories
you?
like that going around that all that kind of stuff was happening in the 60s and 70s as well. I think Bob Dylan got accused recently, and who knows the veracity of the accusation.
Robert Zimmerman?
Every single time. So anyway, we should get
Jesus
into
Christ.
the final summary and reviews here and give it a number of gong rips.
Gong
Indeed, we
rips.
should.
Bong
We
rips?
should. One
right.
or the other.
So Robert, you want to give us your final summary review and how many gong hits you're going to give this thing?
Okay. Well, you got to judge the movie by how well it entertained you and what it was trying to do, and it was trying to tell this story of this man's supposed life, and I thought it was fantastically acted. I mean, the acting isn't transformative, right? I mean, it's George Clooney, it's Julia Roberts, it's Drew Barrymore, it's our guy, but they're not. The only one who really transforms himself is the main character for the most part, I would say, Sam Rockwell. But I don't know if he's going to win any awards for that. But it's all solid. It all seems like they're having fun. It's competently written. I don't know what the script looked like versus the final product, but I know Kaufman is a fantastic writer. I've always enjoyed his stuff. We've done several of his films on this show. This one is definitely more paint by numbers than his other work, his own stuff. I mean, this is obviously an adaptation of somebody else's writing, but he didn't take it to new directions. He seemed to just kind of transcribe, create something that was already there. So, I like Mike said, it's a fairly basic story. It's not trying to trick you. At least it didn't seem that way. I had a great time. I don't know if it's like my favorite film of the year or anything, but it's definitely a positive recommendation for somebody that wants to see, is it historical fiction? Is it something that did happen? How much is true? How much is not true? It's all fun to kind of talk about and ponder. So I would give this, I mean, it's funny to see Barris being the pariah figure. And that's also put in the movie a lot, of this guy that created a bunch of garbage that was polluting the airwaves. I'm not going to judge that so much. Although I think if you were to talk to an earlier version of Robert and you were talking about all the reality TV shows that came on in the early 2000s, early and mid 2000s, I would say that kind of stuff was very much in the similar vein, where you're just kind of gawking at people's trashy lives and how the producers would play up on the drama that, by all rights, doesn't or should not exist. It's definitely a populist mentality where you're playing to the lowest common denominator, playing on the human's based instincts to make yourself feel better about yourself, I guess, in your own life. If you're seeing somebody else's life that's spinning out of control or completely in the toilet, uh, it's he's probably one of the first people to kind of do that, right? I mean, he's like the Jerry Springer of the 60s and the 70s, right? Kind of that style of person that's gonna entertain you by showing you something very base and low, I guess you could describe it as. But I found him a very interesting character. The kind of psychology that's going into that person's head to create that, and all the problems that came along with it. I had a good time. I would give this 7 gong hits.
Yeah.
Out
Get
of
it
10.
right. Get it right. Weedhead.
Or the other. I mean, you get one or the other. Either one.
All right. Very good. Very good. Well, thank you for that. And I'll go now. Mine can be pretty quick. I think that this is a movie that bears a second watching, so that once you get the basic structure of the story down, then you can watch it again and pay more attention to what's really going on. And I think it'll make a lot more sense. Though the George Clooney scene at the end, the climax, is probably still going to be a bit confusing, as we discussed earlier. Overall, I think it's a pretty well done movie. I don't get the Kaufman esque vibe from this. So I think, like Robert was saying, it's more of just a straightforward telling of the story and adaptation of the script. I hear that Chuck Barris was involved in the story itself, like making edits to the screenplay while they were recording or while they were filming. But I think that George Clooney and Julia Roberts and Drew Barrymore were all great. And I think Sam Rockwell was great in this. He's one of those guys. I mean, this was 2002. He's been around a long time, and I know he's been in some good stuff. But he's just one of those guys who I barely recognize or pay attention to. I think he just melds into whatever character he's playing, versus somebody like George Clooney, who in virtually everything he's in, that's just George Clooney. I mean, he can't be anyone else. But I think that someone like Rockwell, he kind of blends into whatever he's doing, and that chameleon characteristic is pretty cool. So that's good to see in this, and I think he did a great job. So overall, I think it was a great recommendation as a movie to watch, not necessarily as an episode to do. But Mike, we turned it into an episode worthy of talking about. So thank you for that. I think we all learned something on this one. So I'm going to give it 6.5 gong rips on the bang a gong here.
Well, I mean, the real treasure is the friends we met along the way, I think, with this one. Yeah, it's competently shot, edited. The script is obviously, like, it's well written. I mean, the movie, I don't know. I've started rating movies on how many minutes of them I'll watch based on their runtime, and this is about 3-1 now, right? So we're above a 10 out of 10 in a way. I've seen this. I watched this, for free around 2002. Just kind of casually, like out of nowhere, I wanted to see it. And it kind of knocked me off my feet, I think at the time. And then I watched it again. Yeah, it sort of holds up. It doesn't ask a lot of the viewers, so that's really nice. The characters make sense. The plot makes sense. There aren't any gaping holes except for maybe the one we discussed is a little bit loose. And honestly, I recommend watching it. I mean, I kind of started about like an 8 out of 10 coming into this, but then you guys have convinced me maybe 7 out of 10, just taking the shine off a little bit. So yeah, I don't know.
That's what we do, Mike.
I have nothing but contempt for George Clooney, and he directed a pretty good movie here. So, like, I hate everything else he's done.
Really? Well,
oh yeah, I didn't like Suburbicon one bit. It's blatant propaganda. Monuments Men. Have you seen this movie?
No, you're talking about Clooney as director, not necessarily as an actor. Because
I don't like his acting either. He's a bit of a dick. He's just him. He just shows up, and he's not that interesting as as a.
He's suave. He's cool.
Is he suave?
George
I
Clooney
think Soderbergh is very suave. I think
Out of
Soderbergh
Sight.
knows how to make people look cool.
He's
But
great in Out of Sight. Ocean's 11.
I can drink a cup of coffee while talking to somebody. That's, you know what I mean? It's the directing, and it's the fact that he's royalty, that he's even there, and he's got a symmetrical face. Fine, but I don't really like his creative work. You know, I don't. There's not a lot there.
Isn't he also
Yeah,
good in Burn After Reading? Isn't he good in that?
yeah, you know what? He's excellent in that. Again, I mean, the Coen brothers. So,
Yeah.
uh,
Men Who Stare at Goats. He's in that.
you know,
Three
if you can
Kings?
use him,
ER?
as him, it sort of works for sure.
If you
But
need a Clooney, get him.
if you need a Clooney, get it. You know, get Clooney. But there's plenty of other Clooneys out there that probably work harder for you for less money.
Okay. All right.
You know, there's
Josh
probably another
Brolin's
guy
better
that's
Clooney.
like, yeah, it's hard to imagine the Peacemaker without George Clooney, but I'm sure Keanu Reeves could have filled in that role, or Robert Redford, or Michael Douglas. You know, you guys remember that?
Black
Anyway,
Rain.
I don't like his work, but this movie I particularly like. As a red pilled and black pilled sort of libertarian 1/3 fascist, seeing the world crumble around me because of propaganda, it's very difficult to watch media, and I had a hard time finding the forced messaging in this film. To be honest, like there's not a lot there for me to get angry about. Maybe that's because it's only 2002 and they hadn't put their foot on the gas, but I don't feel like I'm being brainwashed trying to watch this. So that alone is, past the 50% mark. And the fact that the acting and the script are good, maybe, you know what? I am going to go 8. 8.
Okay.
8
Revise
out
it
of
back
10.
up. Revise it back up because it's a peek behind the curtain a little bit.
And like I said, if you can watch a movie more than once, I mean, that should be 2 over 1 in my book. I don't go through movies these days, so I've watched this one 3 times. I mean, at the behest of, because I was drunk the last time I watched it a week ago, and then I told you about this movie, and you're like, we should do a show on it. And
that was your first mistake, Mike.
So I had to watch it again today, but I was half asleep. So between the 2 viewings, I pretty much got 1 viewing out of it. But, no notes, and a lot of the ideas stuck with me. And just talking to you guys with it, I'm realizing like the well-constructed narrative, of like him dealing with his trauma and stuff. So I mean, that's all good storytelling. So I think I recommend seeing it because like it's a breath of fresh air. It's a fine glass of wine after crossing a desert of Marvel films and all that shit.
Other drudgery.
SJWs are ruining our movies.
All right, Mike. Well, thanks again for coming on and remind people what they can find if they go to Mechanical Dream Revolution, now scrolling at the bottom of the screen.
Yeah, go to Mechanical Dream Revolution for specific instructions on how to survive this apocalypse. And by apocalypse, I just mean the literal definition of great revealing of knowledge. No, seriously, it's kind of the feedback I get is that it's pretty groovy. You can just kind of put it on the background, and there's lots of pieces of truth that might stimulate your own sort of subjective response. And Dan will attest to its greatness, not me.
Right. Yes. Refer back to earlier in the episode where I pontificated about the greatness of Mike's musical endeavors.
It's hard to like my own stuff, but I do know that I do get good feedback on a lot of it. So.
All right. Well, I am a fan, of course, and I think I'm in the top of your charts whenever you see your stats. So
yeah.
I think it's a bit obvious. Anyway, thanks again for being a guest for, I don't know, 15th, 16th time, something like that. And we'll, of course, have all of those prior appearances at lastnairs.com/whatever this is. Let's see, is it 191? Yeah, 191. So people can find the show notes more. You'd also check out about an hour of pre-show content over at lastnight.com/Patreon, and we'll get into some Kathleen Turner Overdrive in just a few moments after this. But before we get to that, Robert, I got to tell you about our next episode, and you're going to love me for this one.
I will.
I think I sent you a screenshot where I planned this with the guest, and the guest said Robert's gonna hate us or gonna kill us for this. It's The Croods. We're gonna do a animated film, The Croods, and she's got some things she wants to talk about on it relevant to
I believe that
day.
movie is marketed towards 4-year-olds, so looking forward to that one. Should be good.
This is one that I can watch with my kids, and I've already let them know. So there's no changing it now. There's no backing out. I'm going to watch this with the kids and take notes. And we're going to have Rachel Kennerly of what's the name of her new show? Just Add Liberty. I was going to say Smells Like Liberty. And her other show is Cannabis Heals Me, and she has been on several times in the past for a variety of different genres of film. She's been on for an M. Night Shyamalan Ding Dong movie, The Village. She's been on for Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle. She's been on for at least one or two other things that don't line up with any of that stuff. Do you remember where they were?
Nope, but I do love Rachel, so we'll have a good time.
Yeah, it should be a lot of fun, and we'll be coming at you with The Croods next week with Rachel Kennerly. So that'll be a lot of fun, and we'll see you guys all then. Until then, have a good night from last night, everyone. Peace out, and check out Mechanical Dream Revolution for Mike's work and lastnight.com/191 for the show notes and more for this here episode. And we will see you guys on the flip side. Maximum freedom.